Thank you all for coming to this class or this discussion. Really, we put it on as a discussion class, so we'll give sort of a little overview, and then we'll have lots of time at the end to talk and discuss things. I am Maestro Eduardo Francesco Maria Lucrezia, current Prince of the Summits with my husband.
I'm Grim Baneson, Prince of the Summits, and the Order of the Pelican, and also a knight.
And we are here today with Ashaksi, who's our moderator, to talk about the history of the Inspirational Equality movement and where we are now and where we could go with Inspirational Equality. I wanted to say before we started into the class itself or the discussion itself that this is our perspective. This is our experience, our lived experience, and it's not necessarily anyone else's experience. I think that's really critical in all of the DEIB issues to think about that is something that comes from you and it's may or may not be shared. So please know that this is what we've experienced, not necessarily what everyone has experienced. We'd also like to thank everyone that has participated in the Inspirational Equality movement, everyone that has come before us. We wouldn't be here today as Prince and Prince of the Summits without a lot of hard work from a huge community, which we'll talk about during this class. So I'll just give you a little brief overview of Inspirational Equality for those of you that don't know. We had breakfast this morning with friends from the Outlands, and we were talking about this class. And they didn't really even understand, like, they've been in the SCA for about 15 years, and it was sort of like, well, what do you mean people couldn't fight for same-sex people? So we've come a huge long way because there are new people, and really not new, they've been around for a while, that really take it as a given that everyone was always allowed to fight for everyone else, but that wasn't the case. And it's recent history. The people that struggled to allow women to fight in the SCA, that was a huge struggle in the late 70s. And it's a struggle now. Oh, I should say, I've been in the SCA a long time, so my perspective is probably a little different than other people. I started in the SCA in Atlantia in college in 1983, and became a peer 36 years ago, this 12th night. So I have a long history and perspective that's different. But the people that fought hard for women to fight, when I started in the SCA in 1983, it had only been 5 to 7 years that women were allowed to fight. In about 12 years ago, Mistress Ariel de Courtenay came to me and said, hey, I want to fight for my partner. And she was unable to fight for her partner, who was a woman. And I saw a huge need to change this language, but it was in corpora. It was in our governing documents that you had to have a consort of the opposite sex. It was 4 words. And Ariel and I decided that we'd been in the SCA a long time. Both of us were peers, and we should do something about that. So we petitioned the Crown. At the time, that was Morgan. Yes, that was our last king. It was Tiernan and Miranda, and we put together a petition that said we petitioned that people of the same sex should be able to fight in onto your crown. We gave it to them. There was a large, maybe 15, 20 people that came with us to present this. and it basically didn't go anywhere. We asked them if they would petition the BOD for a variance, or that we could petition the BOD to get those 4 words removed from corpora, and that didn't happen, and it sort of languished for about a year. And then Ariel and I decided we needed to do something much more proactive, and we created the Inspirational Equality movement. It really would not have happened without Ariel's initiative and her need to fight for her inspiration. And I really would like to make sure that people are aware of that. Mistress Ariel is not playing in the SCA anymore. She's had a very terrible accident, and is seriously injured, so she doesn't play in the SCA very much, but we have been in contact. I told her about this class that we were doing, and she's very happy about it. So I also want to give you a little context. I'm sure many of you know, but the context around inspirational equality, things were changing both inside the SCA and outside the SCA. So when we think about the inspirational equality movement, we can't take it sort of out of time and place, right? We have to make sure that we understand the context in the SCA. So inside the SCA, things were starting to change. We had our first same-sex baronial couple in Caid, and then we had immediately, almost like a few months later, really, His Highness became the first same-sex baron in Antir. And then we also then followed almost immediately by a same-sex female couple in one of the middle-ish kingdoms. I can't remember if it was it the middle? So things were changing rapidly. Now, just because the baronial issues had changed, there still was huge resistance around same-sex rulers. But that was the sort of context in the SCA. So there was some change there. Outside the SCA in the modern world, huge movement with states accepting same-sex couples from a marriage perspective, granting adoption rights, all of that sort of thing. Also, just so you know, so my ex-husband and I also have 2 children. We were the first same-sex male couple to adopt in Washington State. That was 21 years ago. So that was all changing. Things were changing at a national level. We didn't have equal marriage at a national level at that time, but there was certainly lots going on from the perspective of expanding rights for same-sex couples. I would like to say too that the original inspirational equality movement did start as a LGBTQ issue. It has since obviously expanded to other gender minorities as well. And we're really happy that we have a larger family of LGBTQIA plus people. And it's important to remember that that's where it started, but it has expanded greatly over the past 10 years. So after we asked the BOD through the Crown to expand and were denied, Ariel and I sort of had a session between the 2 of us on what we would do. We petitioned the BOD directly. Of course, there was no response. And then we started the Inspirational Equality Facebook group. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen on this big green button with here we go. This is the Inspirational Equality Facebook page. It is not very active at the moment, but I would encourage everybody to go to it and take a look. There's some great resources, especially here in the files section. I'm not going to go to that, but in the files section, we have all sorts of things around same-sex rulers in the time period. We have strategy documents. We have all sorts of different things we put in the file section to move the movement forward. There's lots and lots of great information here. You can see that there's some pin posts that Ariel put up about the purpose of the list. Recently, we put up our investiture photos, lots of different things. In here, people still continue to post pictures. This is a same-sex baronial couple in the mid-realm. This was when His Highness won coronet and when we're being invested as the Tannists of the summits. Lots and lots of information here. It's a big history. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back now, but please, it's Inspirational Equality in the SCA. There are a couple of Inspirational Equality Facebook groups. There was, I'm gonna stop sharing. There was a movement, that's what I'll say, um, that was sort of like a counter movement that used inspirational equality in the title of their Facebook group, and it confused a lot of people. But you might find that. So we started the Facebook group and tried to activate a community around it, and it grew very rapidly, more rapidly than we had expected. Most of what you'll see on there are positive comments, because this was a group for us to use for activists. So that's what you'll see in that group. But I want to make sure that people understand it happened so fast from an SCA time period perspective. I mean, from the time we initially petitioned Tiernan and Miranda to the time the BOD changed, and we'll get to change some words. They didn't do what we wanted, but they changed some words. It was 4 years. Now, why that happened, and I think this is important for all DEIB people who are working towards change. It happened, in my opinion, again, my perspective, for a couple of reasons. The context within the SCA and outside the SCA was just perfectly ripe. It was the perfect time for something like this to happen. Secondly, technology had changed, and we were able to very much activate people and get people involved and assign tasks and just all sorts of things. Facebook was sort of brand new, so there was no Discord, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok back then, but Facebook, really, the technology allowed us from a social perspective to really ignite the movement. I think it's also important to understand that we wanted a very specific change. So it's hard to say DEIB, we want diversity, equity, and inclusion in the SCA. That's a really big goal, and it's got so many different parts and pieces. With inspirational equality, we were laser focused. Change the 4 words, just delete them. Every combatant in a crown tournament must have a consort, and take the 4 words out of the opposite sex. Just cut it. That's all we wanted. So it was targeted, specific, and it was easy to communicate. So that's why, in my opinion, we were as successful as we were, besides the fact that we had a huge group of people helping in getting the change to happen relatively quickly. I don't want to leave you all with the impression that it was easy. Over those 4 years, we, as a group of people in Ontario and throughout the known world, but mostly in Ontario, petitioned our crowns. Every single crown tournament, we went up to the crown and asked to fight in the tournament. And of course, unfortunately, and I don't know who's if there's any of the crowns from Ontario here, but we can get their perspective as well during the discussion. And we're denied. Well, they had to deny us because the BOD, the language corpora, denied us from fighting. It was incredibly emotional for some crowns. Well, for all crowns, it was outwardly emotional from several crowns. It was very hard and difficult to be denied over and over and over again. And that emotional toll was a lot. We also, in one time when we asked to fight, we had outwardly hostile people in the audience when we did processional, and I was called the F word and told to sit down, sit my fucking faggot ass down. It was not really, it was awful. There was a lot of dissent around this issue from people that we were shocked about, old timers that said tradition, tradition, tradition. This is how we've done it. It didn't happen in the time period. We have a comprehensive list of same-sex rulers on the Inspirational Equality Facebook page. So that argument was put down fairly quickly, but also, so what? It's the Middle Ages as they were supposed to have been. It's the Society for Creative Anachronism. We can use polyester, but we can't have same-sex rulers. It was a lot of emotional work, a lot of hard work. Every single day, Ariel and I and many, many people on the Inspirational Equality list would strategize about an argument around this one. There was big arguments around daisy chaining. Like, oh, well, it's gonna impact females fighting because those super dukes are just gonna fight for each other. So this duke will fight for this duke, and this duke will fight for this duke, and this duke will fight for this duke, and it will all be wrapped up, and we'll never have any rulers except those super dukes who are daisy chaining. As far as we know, that hasn't happened. There have been, up until us, several, and this is something getting into where we are now, same-sex couples that have fought. They have not been in a romantic or a relationship like Finn and I have, but they have been, from a ruling perspective, men fighting for another friend or a family member, etc. So we did actually eventually get corpora to change. Now, this is something that I wanted to talk a little bit about. Originally, corpora got changed, but it did not get changed with dropping the 4 words. It got changed so that kingdoms could allow. It was based on a kingdom by kingdom. They have now dropped the 4 words, but that was a long time coming. Ariel and I, when the BOD decided to make that change, decided that we would not formally acknowledge that because it wasn't what we intended with the group. We also believed that you've just basically outsourced the discrimination. So the BOD really just basically said, okay, well, the kingdoms that want to discriminate can do that. Well, you can still do that anyhow, because as royalty, you are always allowed to tell who you approve in your lists and who you don't. But it's basically was outsourcing the discrimination. We are also accused of wanting to sue the SCA. I want to make it clear that was never ever our intent. And intent and impact, we had a whole class on that just a little bit ago, can be different, but it was never ever our intent. Our intent was to allow for same-sex couples to fight and to protect the SCA, because from the research that we did, and we had lawyers that looked at the cases, and we had legal scholars say, hey, you put yourself in a really bad situation. If we had had a Crown list, we didn't, but if we'd had a Crown list in Canada during the time period where it was not acceptable for same-sex couples to fight, And we had asked to fight, as we had been doing, because we wanted to make that point, and our crowns wanted us to do that. If we had done that in Canada, the SCA would have been in a very bad position. We wouldn't have sued the crown. Oh, sorry, and I'm talking from my Canadian perspective. The crown meaning the province. In Canada, the legal system is like the crown. Would have actually pursued legal action against the SCA because it's against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. And we kept pointing this out in Canada. We had people in Europe pointing out that this can't happen in Europe. If somebody wants to fight and we deny them, we're going to be in a world of hurt because of the way things are structured from a legal perspective in countries outside the United States. So finally it got changed, which we were very, very happy about. And we get to fight now, but there's so much more work to still be done on this issue, and of course on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging in the SCA. The main thing is once this change happened, Ariel and I were pretty tired. And although there were lots and lots and lots of other people helping, we were very much the directors and how about you do this? Or here's a space that needs helping. Who can we get to lead this? We really backed off after it because we were just exhausted. 4 years of almost every single day working on this issue was emotionally and physically exhausting. And so we took a step back. Initially, there were lots and lots of ideas of what was next, and most of them haven't come to fruition. We do believe that there's a need to document who's asking to fight in crown tourneys from a gender diverse perspective, not just a same-sex perspective, but a gender diverse perspective. Who's won? We don't have a comprehensive list of same-sex rulers from a baronial perspective or from a crown or principality perspective. I mean, we know in Ontario, but
Well, I'm trying to finish fleshing out that list. I've gone back to the Inspirational Equality page and starting to fill in that spreadsheet as well.
so there's lots of stuff to still be done, and that's the first piece. We know that there are kingdoms that have never had a same-sex couple or a gender diverse couple fight in their crown, but we don't know which kingdoms. We don't know who, if they're being allowed to fight, if they're not being allowed to fight. We only really know now sort of what's happening in Ontario, which is a incredibly open and supportive kingdom. So there's lots of work still to be done. If people are interested in it, maybe after we're finished with the rain, we'll have a little bit more energy to focus on some things like that. But we're always happy to support and help people and tell them our experience, show them the resources that are available, and talk about where we think things should be going. But this isn't our movement, it's everybody's. So we really do need support and help with that. Just want to take a second to say, we're sitting here now and we have these wonderful principality coronets on our heads, and we have a great supportive principality and kingdom, but this was not something I ever dreamed about. I didn't have a fighter fighting for me. My ex-husband wasn't a fighter. He was barely in the SCA. And this was something I did for other people. And to have this come back full circle has been an amazing experience. So that's sort of our perspective. I think another big piece that needs to be addressed and worked through is the inherent misogyny that's in the SCA. I do believe that homophobia and the hatred and the issues that were going on then are actually rooted in institutional and societal misogyny, that we have a lot of work to do to help women become equal. And if we can work on that from an inspirational standpoint, I think we would all be better off. I don't really believe that this is a gay issue or a trans issue. I think it's really um, a people that have been subjugated issue. And the biggest group is women. So I think that's where our focus has to be moving forward. So I don't know, I can't see, I forgot to say, if you have questions, please ask questions. Let's get a conversation going. So maybe we'll just pause right now.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you,
Elizabeth, go ahead.
do you want me to stop recording so that we can open it up for freely for questions or
I think first, at least at first, let's maybe ask some questions about the specific topics that we talked about.
Okay.
We'll keep the recording going for that, and then we'll have a little bit of a safer space. What time is it? In maybe about 10 or 15 minutes, we'll have a safer space. We'll stop the recording, and then people can really um, feel safe and able to expose themselves in a way that they wouldn't with the recording, if that's okay with everybody else.
sounds good to me.
Okay, I did see, the only thing, I haven't been looking at the questions at all because I'm also blind, so uh, I just did see somebody said they love our tunics. We do too. This was for our uh FAFO event at 12th night, and Rosalind made these for us from Lionsgate with the laurel and the pelicans. We both have pelicans, and there's some pictures on our Facebook feeds and the onto your Facebook feeds of us with in these at 12th night. So thank you so much. We love them too.
You spoke earlier about wondering if there was a crown that you presented to in the group, and I think that Duchess Kiva is here. I don't
Yeah, I
know
saw
if
that.
she wants to say anything, but
Well, that would be great. And Kiva, I'd love if you could come off mute and talk. And I'd just like to say first, Ulf and Kiva were the first crowns to allow us to fight.
I was trying to recall if we had ever had to deny anybody, and I certainly remember somebody else mentioned Thorne and Dagmere having to deny you, and I remember that moment and how terrible it was. And just how wrong I was. Like, this is not why I do this. This is not why I want to be here. This has to get fixed because everyone deserves to fight and feel what it feels like to have somebody on the field point them out as their inspiration. It's a wonderful feeling, and everyone deserves it. And I remember that the bod came down and said, it's up to the crowns. Like you talked about sort of passing the buck, and the buck was very much passed to the crowns. I thought it was I don't want to say wimpy, but I'm just going to say wimpy because what are they going to do? Take my birthday away? It was a pretty wimpy move. And it was detrimental. Like in Drachenwald, the crowns did deny a same-sex couple based on the fact they were a same-sex couple. Now, I went to Drachenwald after that and had a chance to speak to those crowns and just like what they were thinking. And there was a lot of I would say, there was some ignorance, and it was sort of an unfortunate situation. But in Ontier, I remember we stepped up at 12th night, and there was never any doubt in my mind we were going to open the list. And then my husband Alf stepped up as the first piece of business, and he just said, our list is open to everybody. And he sat down, and that was it. It was like, I think he said six or seven words. And the room just burst into tears. Like, I remember Dagmere, just a lot of people, and it was done. And it was sort of closed for our kingdom. And it was a wonderful moment. And now, there is still a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of people feeling unsafe, and we need to talk about that. How do we make these spaces safer? And that's why I'm so glad. And I'm so glad to have been here and to see you talk about that history, which is so important. And we just have a very small piece of that history, but I'm very proud of anything we were able to do. So
Yeah, that's
thank
such an
you.
it's an important part. Like people will say, like you just said, that it's only a small part. No, you may have felt like it's a small part, but every piece is important. It's a puzzle. It's like a
Yeah.
jigsaw. So whatever you do to contribute is so important to the overall picture. I would like to say I was so excited when Ulf said that, obviously. He's been a friend of mine since he was 14, so long, long time. And in Ontario, we have a little bit of, like, okay, this is done. This isn't going to be a big deal. We've had at least 7 or 8 gender minorities fight
Yeah.
in Crown, every single Crown. It's just a given. Um, we are in a rarefied bubble in Ontario. And although I think it's important that we say it's done, everybody can fight, where this should just be normalized. That's not the case in a lot of kingdoms. So we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we understand that although that's normalized and fairly safe in Ontario, it's not safe for everybody in other parts of the world, other parts of the United States. So, like in our class on holding space, which we'll do later today, safety first, safety first. It's so important because it's still not safe in many parts of the world to be openly gay or trans or gender fluid in. So that's important. And thank you so much. Other questions for Kiva or us about what we talked about, or our experience? Try not to make me cry anymore. Elizabeth, your video's on. Did you have a question?
No, just I feel as though the bod has come down on the wrong side of history by repeatedly refusing even to consider alternate types of crowns. I don't think we can have real diversity or equality until there are other ways of achieving the throne. I am from the East, where this is currently a very hot topic. But I really feel that that's a huge thing that also has to happen.
Yeah.
And
There-
I understand, I have a lot of friends who are old timers, and I understand the idea that it messes with their sense of the game. But plenty of people in the Middle Ages who achieved great power without fighting with swords.
For sure. It's just a small sort of comment on that. When Finn won coronet, it wasn't the first thing I said. It was because I said I love you and thank you and all of that sort of gushy stuff when someone wins. It was an experience. It was just very surreal experience. But fairly soon, probably in the car ride back, I was like, this is the worst way to choose her. Like we're now in that position, but it's not, it's just not a great way to choose who is going to be ruling us. But it's 6 months. I support alternate ways to choose. My main concern around that is that we don't use, well, it's more fair or equal if we add rapier. Well, no, that just expands it slightly. So the conversation really needs to be around what do we need in a ruler? What do we want in a ruler? What are we looking for? That purpose mission statement of that, and then how do we achieve it on a basis that is equitable, not equal, equitable. So there's a large conversation, and it'll be I'm glad that it's a variance. We didn't think about that in the inspirational equality movement. We should have maybe just asked, can we have a variance for Ontier? And then tried it out that way, showed that there was no harm. So that I think that's a great approach. And we'll see where that goes. I don't think we were really allowed to say much more than that with these on our heads. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your perspective, Elizabeth.